stand up or remain standing. We're going to be reading from Isaiah 9. That'll be our passage for today. So Isaiah 9, starting in verse 2. It should be on the screen for us. The people who walk in darkness will see a great light. For those who live in a land of deep darkness, a light will shine. You will enlarge the nation of Israel, and its people will rejoice. They will rejoice before you as people rejoice at the harvest, and like warriors dividing the plunder. For you will break the yoke of their slavery and lift the heavy burden from their shoulders. You will break the oppressor's rod, just as you did when you destroyed the army of Midian. The boots of the warrior and the uniforms blood-stained by war will all be burned. They will be fuel for the fire. For a child is born to us, a son is given to us. The government will rest on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. His government and its peace will never end. He will rule with fairness and justice from the throne of his ancestor David for all eternity. The passionate commitment of the Lord of Heaven's armies will make this happen. This is the word of the Lord. You may be seated. So this is our first week of what the church sometimes calls Advent. Advent. And that just means the arrival. And so historically, for the last 2,000 years, the church has celebrated the arrival of Jesus' first coming as we await his second coming. And so that's what the season of Advent is all about. But just a couple quick questions. Who here has already started listening to Christmas music? Who here? Who here was listening to Christmas music since Thanksgiving? Since before Thanksgiving? Anyone? Okay, Maggie, the real Christmas fan here. Who's already put up their Christmas tree? Okay. Who here, okay, so fake trees, raise your hand if you're a fake tree person. Real trees, raise your other hand. All right, we're all divided on everything. Awesome, this is a good community. This has nothing to do with the sermon. I'm just taking stats. Thank you for participating. There's a song by Bo Burnham. Bo Burnham is one of the philosophers. No, he's just kidding. He's a comedian. And his song is called That Funny Feeling. And a couple of the lyrics, just to get you the gist of the song, it's this ode, this song in celebration of what's often called nihilism, or that nothing matters. And so he says, the whole world at your fingertips, the ocean at your door. So you can search the whole world, but don't worry, global warming is coming, it doesn't matter. 20,000 years of this, 7 more to go. Going for a drive and obeying all the traffic laws in Grand Theft Auto 5. And so this song is not an ode of any joy or hope. It's just pointing out this making fun of the fact that we have all these advancements, but it doesn't seem like it's helping us. It doesn't seem like it's getting us anywhere positive. And I don't think that a comedian making these jokes is isolated. The fact that people are laughing and I know that song reveals that there are many people who feel this way about the world. All these advancements in medicine and technology, that we have all this world peace in so many ways. It's better than it was 100 years ago, but in so many ways it's still not getting any better. And so this season of Advent, this season of hope, is there any hope? Recently I bought some donuts at Winchell's Donuts, and I think it's solid Ray, just because you judge it and think that it's not good. I think it's good, but whatever. We'll have this discussion later. Ray. Just Ray. On the box it says, love, joy, peace. But there's no hope. So interesting. Of all the ones to not include, there's no hope. There's love and joy and peace, but there's no hope. In Joshua, the book of Joshua is the story of God's people taking the land that they had been promised. They were told, you're going to receive the land that God had promised to your ancestor Abraham, that you'd come out of to go into Egypt to save yourselves, but you're going to get the land now. And very quickly into the book, they realize that yes, God's going to give them what he promised, but it's going to cost them something. And so they come to the city of Jericho and they send some spies. And these spies go in and they infiltrate the city and they meet someone named Rahab. And Rahab was a prostitute. And so she's obviously not held in high esteem in her culture. She's in this low profession, and she probably likely did not seek that out. That wasn't her career day choice. But her family, as you can see as you read the story in the context, her family is relying on her to be able to provide for them. And so there's this woman in this low profession, probably not by choice, but by happenstance or by the circumstances of her life. And the spies meet her, and everything she tells them shows that she's probably scared of them. She says that they've heard the stories about what was going on in the wilderness, that these people in Jericho, they know the God of Israel. They don't know if they believe in him, but they know he's scary. And these spies come to her, and she hides them. In exchange, she says, hey, will you just promise to me that when you guys do take this city, that you will spare my family? And they say, we swear by our own lives. And so she lets them down using a rope, a scarlet cord, with this promise that when they come and they eventually do take this city, that they will leave her family safe. Well, flash forward to the 21st century. Most of us in this room aren't rich. Not everyone, don't raise your hands for this one. Not all of us love what we do for work. We're trying to love our friends and family well. We're trying to do the best we can with what we have. As we enter into this Christmas and holiday season, we're a little bit more aware of maybe some of the relational conflicts we have. Maybe for some of us, it's the end of another year, and the question arises, what did we do? Where did it go? The older I get, the faster it seems to fly by. And maybe for some of us, we feel like we're on track, we're where we want to be, but maybe for most of us, we don't feel like we've gotten to the place where we wish we were. Maybe we were hoping we'd be further along in our relationships, or maybe we'd be hoping we'd be further along in our career, in our ability to make money for our families. Maybe some of us, there's a fear of the unknown. Maybe there's this big change coming. Maybe for some of us, we're worried about upcoming conflict. We know the holidays bring in all the extended family, and sometimes that brings some tension. How can we have hope? How can we have hope? The Hebrew word for cord is tikvah. Tikvah. And it's this idea of hope. Now, there are multiple words in Hebrew that we translate to hope, but in English, hope is an abstract concept, right? Like you can say, I hope that the Raiders lose today. I hope that I get home to my family. Those are very different. It's just very abstract. But in other languages, especially in languages like Hebrew, there's this more physical element of understanding. And so the idea of a cord is being hope. In the Old Testament, you see this again and again and again, this common refrain that they don't want to be cut off from the land of the living. That they don't want to be cut off from the land. And this idea is that the cord that they're holding on to, this hope that they have, to have the cord cut is to be hopeless. To be cut off from the land of the living doesn't necessarily to be dead, but it might as well be dead because you have no hope. And so we see in the story of Rahab, this woman holding on to hope. And this scarlet cord representing her very hope that they will remember their promise. And her hope wasn't based in her past or her abilities or her goals. It was based on the promise of two foreign spies, two people that she chose to trust despite knowing that their goal was to overthrow her city. Her circumstances and problems probably told her that this was not a good thing, but she held on to hope anyways. For those of us who follow Jesus, it is unlikely that our hope will be based on our abilities or goals. It is likely that our hope isn't based on us, but because we know how little control we have. The older I get, the more aware I am that I have so little control in life. I don't know if you're like me like that. Our hope is based on God's promise. But how do we know we can trust God's promise? Isaiah 9, our opening scripture, is written during one of the most worrisome times in Jewish history. It was either written during the reign of a bad king during the life of Isaiah, or it was finished during the Babylonian exile. But neither was a particularly hopeful time in the life of Israel. But God gives Isaiah this vision of hope to come, and his name is Jesus. For a child is born to us, a son is given to us. The government will rest on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. And so in this season of unrest, in this time when this author is either under the reign of this bad king or they're not even in the land at all, God gives this promise that one day a son will be born and he will change everything. And that's good news. That's great news. Except they had to wait centuries for the fulfillment. I don't even like waiting 60 seconds for the microwave to work sometimes. They had to wait centuries for God to keep his promise. But yet the promise is kept. So it's not abnormal to wait on God keeping his promise. It's not just us who have to wait. But waiting is the hard part. But all hope requires waiting. Whether it's kids waiting for Christmas presents being opened, or adults waiting for the right opportunity, hope may not change the time we have to wait, but it always changes us as we wait. Hope may not change the amount of time we have to wait, but it always changes us as we wait. Like a cord that we hold on to, it may be small, but as we hold on to it, we begin to develop stronger trust in the one we are hoping for. But how do we hope well? Paul gives us some good pieces of advice on how to do this. In Romans 12:12, it says this: be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, persistent in prayer. Joyful in hope, patient in affliction, persistent in prayer. Joyful. Joy is an attitude that we choose to look at. It's this attitude where we choose to look at Christ instead of our circumstances. The difference between optimism and hope is this. Optimism is a great thing. It's not bad to be optimistic. Optimism is to look at our circumstances and see the best in circumstances. But hope is the ability to look beyond our circumstances and see the one that we are trusting in. Optimism is a good thing, but hope is more than optimism. Hope is to choose to believe despite any circumstances. We choose to keep our eyes on God's promises through our problems. The choice of joy is to not allow our focus to be overwhelmed by our circumstances, but to believe that God will keep his promise no matter our circumstances. This is exactly what Rahab chose to do. Her circumstances told her that there's no way that she can trust these people. There's no way she can trust them. But she believed, she hoped that the God that she had heard about was better than her fears. And that's the choice that we get to make today. We get to choose. Will we choose joy? Will we trust God in the midst of our circumstances that we would rather not have, in the midst of our problems that we cannot control? And will we choose to go through it with our focus on Jesus or on our problem? Joy is based completely on the fact that God has never failed yet, and he won't start now. As we wait expectantly, we wait with joy, knowing that God's promise will come true, even if we have to wait longer than we want. And looking at your own life, do you have joy? Have your circumstances removed your ability to have joy? Have the problems of life become louder than the promise of God? Just do an inventory right now. As you look at your life, have the problems and the circumstances of your life determined the thought process that you live in? Or does the promise of God speak louder and a more true word than even the things we're facing right now? Because all of Christian history, all of the people who followed God throughout all of human history have had to believe God despite the circumstances. Abraham and Sarah. Abraham was far too old to be a dad. Sarah was also not possible for her to become a mother, and yet God kept his promise. Joseph was sold into slavery. He had this belief that God promised that he would be raised above his brothers, but he was sold into slavery, and in the end, God delivers all of his people through him. Jesus, the one who's promised, the one whose government and peace will never end, it says in Isaiah. His government and his peace will never end. Goes and dies on a wooden cross. So often our circumstances and problems seem louder than God's promise, but God's promise always comes true. Hope requires us to wait. Joyfully, we're joyful in our hope because we know that our circumstances and problems cannot deter or stop God's promise. But it requires us to wait with joy and requires us to wait patiently. Waiting while trusting still requires waiting. And we don't like waiting. We in the United States, we hate waiting. How many of us, don't raise your hand again, how many in here when we were driving in this morning followed the speed limit the whole way in? Or on the way to work, or how many of us don't honk our horns when someone doesn't go right at the green? It's very, very American to not be patient. And yet, in order to have hope, we must always be patient because God's timing is rarely our timing. We may often ask God to bring about things a different way than the way He chooses. As I look back at my life, I am often grateful for His way over mine. There's the old country song, I thank God for unanswered prayers. And it's true. I mean, it's not that old of a song, but it's old-ish now. Anyways. But I thank God for unanswered prayers. That if God had worked on my timing, then I wouldn't have gotten all the things that I'm happy for now. I wouldn't have had all the blessings that He had for me on His timeline rather than my timeline. His timing is different than mine, but it's always better than mine. And our waiting is never wasted. God is doing more in our waiting than we are aware of. We just have to open our eyes to see that He is working and ask Him to help us be patient as we wait. Billy knows this is true. A smoked brisket is always better than a microwaved brisket. Good things take time. And so we are called to grow in patience because God is doing something good that He will reveal in His time, not ours. And so in the midst of our patience, we are also implored by Paul to be persistent. Lizzie loves to ask for things from me. It's adorable. She's very cute. It's very hard to say no sometimes. But she loves to ask. In fact, I would say most of our conversation, if you can call it that, all of our communication is her asking for things from me. But this isn't abnormal. Conversations for all humans starts with that transactional level. Lizzie asks, I respond. I ask, she responds. But over time, this asking and receiving, this asking and responding, a depth of relationship forms. As I am consistent and reliable and trustworthy to her, she will grow in relationship and love with me. It may begin transactionally, but it evolves into a depth of a relationship that is irreplaceable. The same seems to be true with God. Most of us, if we're honest, when we first start following Jesus, and maybe me too much even now, it revolves around asking. It revolves around asking God for things. We ask for God to show up in troubled times. We ask for God to save us. We ask for God to forgive us. We ask for God to give us the things we need. All important parts of a relationship with God. It's where it starts. But as we persistently ask for things, maybe in the asking, God is growing our intimacy. Maybe in the ways that God allows us to ask things from Him, He's developing a depth of relationship as He continues to come through and be better even than what we ask for. Maybe in that is where God is growing our relationship with Him. God is a good dad, And he understands that this is where kids start. So keep on asking and keep on seeking in hope, because you are growing closer to God in the midst of your asking. Before you know it, you may find that what you were seeking and all you're asking was actually God himself. And all the things you've been asking from God, the whole reason maybe God didn't give it to you is because he wanted to give you himself first or more. And this is what hope is about. Hope is God's way to develop our trust in him based on his character and promises over our circumstances and problems. This is God's way of developing our trust in him, that we have to wait. The fact that we have to wait, the fact that we have to hope, this develops our trust in him like holding on to a rope. And it begins to help us see God better and see ourselves more clearly. Ever since Brooke had Nathan, I don't know if every guy in this room probably doesn't know, but maybe some of you don't know. After giving birth, it's a really traumatic event on the body. And so Brooke can't pick Lizzie up. She's a little too heavy for Brooke to pick up. Anyways, so through this time period, I've had the blessing to be able to put Lizzie to bed every night. So that was Brooke and Lizzie's thing. And now that Nathan's here, I get to kind of sneak in and get to do it now. It's awesome. So anyways, we have this routine, as she's going to bed, where she says bye to everything. She says bye to the cats, bye to Brooke, bye to baby brother, bye to the stuffed animals, bye to the pumpkins that we have around the house, bye to the pictures. And as we're doing this, it's just this sweet little routine. And then right before I put her to bed, as I rock her in the rocking chair, I sing her these really poor renditions of various songs. But sometimes she's not too happy with the choices that I make, and so she starts putting in requests. And it takes a little while for me to understand because her English it's a work in progress. But this song that we've been singing over and over the past couple of weeks is Great is Thy Faithfulness. Great is Thy Faithfulness. And as I start to sing it, I see a smile appear on her face as she recognizes that I've understood what she's asking for. And this 100-year-old song that I get to sing to my child is just this amazing blessing. You see, years ago, there were moments when I felt like maybe this was never God's calling on my life. I was never going to get married. I was never going to have kids. And even when I got married, I was like, maybe we have infertility issues. And so I remember all these times of asking God, why aren't you doing things on my timeline? Why aren't you doing things on my timeline when I want them? Can't you see how much I want this, God? I'm not trying to be selfish. I'm just asking for good things. I'm just asking for good things. I'm not asking to be rich or to be famous. I don't want any of it. I just want good things. And yet all those times I had no clue what God was doing the whole time. From dead-end relationship to dead-end relationship, working various jobs that would never be able to pay enough to have kids, worrying about all this. I pled with God, what could you be doing? And holding my baby girl as I sing, Great is Thy Faithfulness, I become aware over and over and over again that God's plans and ways are higher than ours and better than ours. And He is more faithful. And He has blessed me beyond anything I could ask or imagine. And His faithfulness is never ending. But there was another day where there was some pleading. On Calvary, as her baby boy was hanging on a cross, Mary must have pled, why, God? This boy that you gave me, this man who was supposed to have a kingdom without end, now dies in shameful agony. Why, God? There is no way that she could have seen or understood what God would do through that wretched tree. On the third day as Jesus rose, that this hope that we have, this joy and patience and persisting, all these things are based in the fact that 2,000 years ago that God worked in a way that no one would have expected or understood. The reason we're even here this morning is because God is faithful and works outside of our timelines and outside of our perspectives to do things His way and ultimately always keeping His promise. And so this Christmas season, would we as a church be focused on the hope that God's plans are better than our plans. That as we seek that hope with joy and patience and persistence, that we would hold on to the rope as long as we can, knowing that God will always keep his promises. Let's pray. Father, we're so limited. We're so limited in our perspective and our ability to see the future. There's so many things that we want right now, God, that are good things. And I'm sure if we just go around the room and ask people the thing that they want, so rarely would it be as selfish as we sometimes think it is. They're usually good things. And we ask God, why? Why haven't we received what we asked for? But stories like Rahab and stories like so many others in this room, God, tell us of a better perspective. One that reminds us that just because you don't give us what we want right now doesn't mean you don't have something better. And God, I'm not trying to promise anyone anything. God, I don't know what you have for them. I don't know the plans that you have for all of us. God, I do know this, that you promise to make all things right in the end. And so no matter what, whether we get the things that we ask for, whether we get something different than what we ask for, we know in the very end when Jesus comes back, that second coming, that second advent that we're waiting for, that we're praying for, that we're hoping for, God, that we ask that we would hope for that with joy and patience and persistence, trusting you that you're going to work it all for good. And that when Jesus comes back, that we'll see that what we really longed for, all those things we hoped for, was really just to know you better. And so, Lord, please just keep giving us yourself. We pray this in Jesus' name.